not sure if it's actually live yet. Okay. Can anyone in the chat, just same as usual, confirm that the audio levels for the Shire music and my speech are about right, and then I can sort of get going. Audio is good. Always good to know. I'll minimize that down. Cool. Hey everyone. It's good to. Hang on, I'm trying to get. It's so. Oh, I'm such a sort of. You become an old man before you know it with technology, and this just isn't refreshing. Anyway. Yeah, Merry Christmas and Happy New Year to everyone. The YouTube page just isn't loading for me, and I like to be able to see what's going on. So you have to bear with me for a second here. So just try properly load this in. There we go. That's better. Right. Hey everyone, Merry Christmas and Happy New Year when it arrives. Thanks for. I'll say at the start, thanks for all the support over the year. And I hope everyone's enjoying the content. And a big thank you to all the paying patrons and subscribers. And if anyone listening, doesn't currently support in that way via the Patreon, and they get some value from the podcast, then please think about heading over to the Patreon and supporting via that way. But as is usual with these, this will be a Q&A with random questions. Some that have been, I'll try not to miss any. Some that have been sent over beforehand, and some, if you want to ask a question, just bung it in the YouTube chat, and go from there. If anyone is now signing in and sending it via another place. So last time I did this, as I was live, someone commented elsewhere. I just kind of stay within the within YouTube while doing these. So thanks for everyone for coming. I hope everyone's had a good Christmas and all that. Merry Christmas, and I hope you all got some good stuff. I might as well just jump into it. So the first question, someone asks, "Hey James, what do you think a Clarkesian environmentalism would look like? Would it be anti-scientific or willing to leverage rationality to attain some pantheistic nature utopia? Would it even be anxious about climate change? Maybe it wouldn't be anything at all. Thank you for the work you're doing. It's awesome." Thank you. A Clarkesian, I'm currently recording, someone else has asked about the spirit as adversary of the soul. So I will answer those two questions actually as one. So I currently have the first ever English translation of Ludwig Klage's magnum opus, the De Geist als Widersacher der Seele, The Spirit as Adversary of the Soul. This is a 1,400-page philosophical tome that is sort of just the most overshadowed masterwork of philosophy of the 20th century, written between 1929 and 1931 or 32. And what I'm doing, and I will get back to the first question, what I'm doing is, so that someone has asked, would that be available in PDF? It will be available in PDF, but what I want to do is basically create a very small site actually dedicated to basically this English translation, because the AI translation is very literal, and it could be easy to just veer off, and I know people are interested in it. So what I'm doing is creating talks for each section of the book. So there's going to be about 70, maybe more, and an overview video and an introduction to Klaga's life. Because at times the translation is like difficult to read, basically. So that's all going to come as one package. So I'm actually hoping to have that done maybe by like the first week of the new year. I've got all the notes already and everything. I've just got to get it recorded, and it's not proving too difficult to do that. And then it'll be a case of formatting it and uploading it. But I'd like to release it all together for another reason, that because Klages is often misconstrued by political thinkers, and it would be nice to just say, well, look, here's all the notes, here's all the resources in one place. You know, I want to know how you came to that conclusion. But it will be available fairly soon, basically, which is great. It's just the most fascinating text. On that line, this first question, what would a Klargesian environmentalism look like? In terms of like an ism, you know, Klages would be, because environmentalism would immediately be, you know, like a thing, like a system that we have to do this, and Klages would say you're grasping something out of real time, what he calls real time, which is becoming, and you are solidifying like a system. So I think a Klargesian environmentalism would be once Geist, which is the disease of kind of fascistic rationalist thought in man, has dissipated, however that happens, what's left is no longer I am hungry or I desire this, but simply hunger. So what is left is literally the natural course of things. So a Klargesian environmentalism wouldn't be a return in any sense or a utopia. It just would be of the becoming. But of course, he writes very romantically about nature. A good place to start with thinking what that might look like is his essay, I think it's just called Earth and Man, Man and Earth. One of his best essays. Would he be anxious about climate change? Well, he would say that really the effects of that have come from Geist, which seeks to improve and rationalize and reason of the world, which has led, and technologize, which has really led to all of that. So yeah. Someone asks, any similarly accurate occult movies like A Dark Song? Nothing comes close in accuracy as A Dark Song, and it's difficult to even do that. I mean, it was really kind of astounding to see that in film, just because it's like, how have you made genuine occultism actually interesting? They managed to do it. The only one that I quite like recommending that's a bit more dramatic is it's called anything for Jackson. Is very good. Maybe like it would be a strange hint, and it leans more towards just dark occultism, but like the iconography and the usage in True Detective would be maybe a pick, and the you know, that kind of ominous feeling that they do in that. I'm trying to think if there's any others that don't just ham it up in some ridiculous sense, but none are coming to mind. The big one, which I think like 3 people have asked me this: where are you at in terms of religion / spirituality these days? Oh, I should say, so actually, one place for anyone who's asked that, I'm moving away from Substack to basically my own hosted site again, which I'm gonna call just metanomad.blog, and I've just put it in the chat. And if you want to know where I'm at with religion / spirituality, I'm writing a little series on there called Burnt Out Nothing, which is really, in a sense, it's kind of like, you know, Baudrillard has that concept of after the orgy, of what you do after the orgy, and it's kind of that, like, what do you do after, what does it look like, and what's happening, and what does honesty look like, what does any of that look like when there's just nothing left to cling to, when no concepts, no religion, no ritual, no like alternative spiritual things, just you grasp them and they just fall away like sand. Eventually you have to admit that just nothing has worked. You have to, as Yuji Krishnamurti says, you have the courage to stand your own, and it's just the process of slowly being burnt out, and it's not particularly nice, and it's sort of like going really fast while standing still. So where am I at? Like, there's nothing I can point to. I'm not saying like, oh, I believe in that, or I'm following this religion, or I'm even following like an alternative thinker. There's just kind of nothing. There's nothing there, and in that, at most, you could say like the mystery of life becomes mysterious again. Like, there's no, I don't have any control mechanisms or anything that wants to hold anything down. So, you know, even the word spirituality or religion, I just don't. I mean, religion makes more sense, right? You follow a guiding dogma, a set of teachings. Spirituality, I'm not keen on. It's too plastic. Like, just like life itself becomes ineffable, and you just fall into the ineffability of it, and the most you can write is really in the negative. So that's where I'm at with that, basically. Feel free to ask more questions along that line. Someone asks in the chat, have I tried getting Luke Smith on the pod? I do know who you're referring to. And actually, me and Luke, I think it was about 2021, we exchanged a few emails about him coming on the podcast, because I see him as a sort of Rand Priere figure. And it never went anywhere. And I think, in a sense, it doesn't really need to happen. I think what Luke's saying is him saying it on his blog. He's also now orthodoxy, so his trajectory just seems to be to do with orthodoxy now, and almost like the moment has passed for that. But he is very good on web stuff, and it's one of the reasons I've moved away from Substack. It's just so heavy, and something about it has just kind of gone wrong. Like, there's some mechanism in contemporary, I don't know what you'd want to call it, because even though I wrote this post called Against Likes and Subscribers, and really that post is actually against a certain mechanism which transforms a site into that, because there's nothing wrong with wanting your work to be popular, and there's nothing wrong with people saying like I liked something and sharing it. That's how messages spread. But there's something very pernicious and invasive about specific metrics, because it just transforms every website into something that can, what's the quickest way to get to a, like, humans are so awful. There's something in our biology, something Darwinian, I think, that is about hoarding and accruing, and like our Darwinian purpose seems to be to be, it's very easy to make it go haywire by giving it a mechanism where number goes up. And this is the big problem with like hangovers from basically monkey brain, is that this is the reason people overeat, is because you still have that like, here's a ton of calories, I should eat them all because I don't know when I'm going to get them again. So it's like monkey brain hasn't caught up with the modern world, and online systems of aggrandizing likes and subscribers are even worse for that, because nothing really changes if your post has got 50 likes or 100 likes or no likes. And that doesn't even really mean people have read it. It doesn't mean anything. It's literally just a number that's gone up. So there's something very not good for us about those. But my point back to Luke Smith, he's very good on that kind of technology. Someone says, hello James, would you consider doing an episode on the life and times of James Webb? So I have James Webb, the something circle, the one he wrote about Gurdjieff and all his followers. That was quite good. I don't know enough outside of that about him as a person, but I'd be open to do it. So Flight of Eros says, last Q&A you mentioned you could send me the raw PDF. Chance I could get this before you publish the edited. I haven't cut anything out. There's nothing been cut out. The only reason I say it's edited, I definitely would never do anything like that. It's translated. It's just formatted. So it's more that the first PDF was, it was readable. It's still words, but the paragraphs were all over the place, and just various OCR scans of text ruin words. So it took a long time. But I'm happy to send you the PDF if you email me at emedicspodcast@protonmail.com, then I can get that over to you. Barry Brown says spiritual quietism. I'm not sure if it's not really anything. I can't really put a name on it because there just doesn't seem to be anything there, and I don't know if that's. I don't want to say it's not even a stage in a process, but yeah. There just isn't anything there to like grasp. Oh, sorry. Sorry. I didn't mean to miss that question. It didn't. Hang on. Oh, there we go. Yeah. So I just can't put a name on it. Someone says come to Brazil. I have a good friend from Brazil who occasionally talks about what it's like there, and I'm not sure I will. Yeah. Beautiful Golden Dragon says, what do you think about Reform Party? Do I still consider myself to the right of Genghis Khan? Well, to the second question, no. As per the recent Vey episode, I mean, it's the first time I've had to put any label on it. I would consider, if you have to put a label on it, I would consider myself just an anarchist now, but not one of any, like, oh, this school, or like, is it classical anarchism of Kropotkin or Bakunin, and not, I would be referring back basically to Darren Allen here in 33 Myths of the System, which is that so much of what we call politics, different parties, small schools, groups, whatever, they usually have in them their belief is that in altering one facet, or maybe even a few facets or parts of it, of the system as a whole, that somehow the whole system is going to change in relation to their worldview. And what we've seen is that, and what we do see is that the system as a sort of egregore, referring to that rationalizing, deadening, 1,001 different words that I could throw at it, but hopefully people will just know intuitively what I mean. The 9 till 5 clock in dead-eyed stare system. The whole political thing is of that, and so any change is, a change in the system is nothing. It's the same. You go for one facet of the system when, like, people will say we need to tackle big pharma. Like, well, what are you? That's just a tiny part of the whole thing. So in terms of back to where I'd be politically now, it would be like an anarchism that's closer to someone like Klages, or an egoism of Stirner, in the sense that what needs to happen is some absolutely categorical change in the consciousness of the way one participates and engages with life itself. So it's not like, right, go read this and this, and then this is how we'd approach this. There's nothing systematic like that, because as soon as you fall into a system, well, you're back basically within the system without realizing it. This is really the triumph, ironically, the triumph of Klages' concept, or so for Klages, and he really is becoming, someone just asked me my favourite philosopher. Klages would be my favourite philosopher of the moment. Klages goes back to the tripartite Greek foundation of the human, which is body, soul, and spirit. Spirit might also be mind. And in that division, mind, or Geist, or spirit, was always seen as the crown, right? The top of the human, the best thing. So the reasoning, rationalizing mind that for Klages has created the entirety of Western philosophy is seen as the tip top, the best thing. But Klages reframes that and says that actually what spirit did, what Geist did, is come down like a disease and split the body and soul like a wedge. And what that is, as a sort of a parasitic force into consciousness, is the system, is the rationalizing, totalizing, deadening system that we're within. So any sort of political project can't ever be a project, because it'd be subsumed back into it. But the dissipation of that back towards Leben, back towards life, is where I'd situate myself. So I don't consider myself to the right of Genghis Khan anymore, and I don't, left, right. No, come on, it just all falls. Just all part of the same thing. I'm still happy to comment on politics, I guess. What do I think about Reform Party? I think that they clearly are. my sort of bet on what the next election's results are going to look like would be something like a coalition between, with Reform having technically a majority, but really not enough of a majority, forming a coalition with the straggling Conservative voters and maybe some other smaller party that might pop up in the next however many years that fragments it even more. But the, you know, I'm not a nationalist, and I find there, you know, all of a sudden, this is really the system speaking in itself, that all of a sudden various virtues, ideals, ideology that many of the same people will have actively been nonchalant towards for the last 10 or 20 years are suddenly being picked up again, basically just to being used as a tool to recruit people and to get people to align to certain values. And it's lazy politics, and it's a lazy appreciation of life. And you can at one and the same time have something that's being used as a scapegoat, even if there is maybe some minor amount of truth to the things that are being said. It's not being said for those reasons. And it's clear that, you know, it probably will be the case that Farage ends up our Prime Minister. And like Demesh says, it will be the Prime Minister that we deserve, unfortunately, for a sort of laziness. And but for me, what's really more astounding watching this, and in a sense unsurprising yet still ultimately depressing, is Deleuze's notion that there is an inner fascist in all of us. And when you really reduce all of this down to what it is people want, it is masses and masses of people who are feeling a bit of a prod, a bit of a knuckle pushed into either the reality of their rather comfortable life, or the comfortable reality that they assume they should have. And all they want, and it doesn't matter how malicious, ignorant, corrupt, or pig-headed the person is who will give them this, all they want is someone just to restore control. And so the inner fascist comes out when there is a threat to, please just let me be able to go to work, come home, eat my yummies, and watch the new Stranger Things. And so much of contemporary politics comes down to, I don't care what it costs in the betrayal of any values I might have had, the betrayal of any ideology I might have had, the betrayal of any culture or ritual, the betrayal of family, the betrayal of anything. I don't care what it costs. Just please, retain the control, and just my comfortable life. And that seems to be what it's pretty much coming down to. Yeah. Someone says, what are my thoughts on using Discord with niche communities? I mean, the Hermetics has a Discord, and we tend to have fairly good chats in there. We have ever since it's been around. But you have to kind of, ironically, you have to rule with an iron fist, because just people basically just want to go online and post porn everywhere, or post ridiculous stuff everywhere, which is like, there's a meme channel. I'm not averse to having a laugh or anything like that, but just like anyone will know this who's ever had a group project or tried to create a project, that you have to be very tough with anyone who's kind of about to drop, the drop of poison in the wine. Like, no, we're not doing that. We're either doing it or not. So I think it's fine, but you really have to like defend niche communities very firmly. Yeah. Someone says, have I ever read Surawadi? No, I don't know who that is, so I haven't. Sorry. Favorite philosophers? Ludwig Klages, obviously. Max Stirner. I mean, Darren Allen. Diogenes. My mind always goes blank when I think of these things. I'm quite enjoying reading Novatori at the moment, but I don't really, whether he's a philosopher or a poet. I mean, Nietzsche, Spengler. I'm about to get into Kojève a bit deeper, but those are my favorites. Someone says, if there was a world war, would you join the army willingly? Um, if there was a world war, see the question of a world war going into the future just seems a strange one for 1,001 reasons. But the one people are talking about, like, would you join? There's the the context is so key on that, right? Because if it comes down to people are invading your borders, right, then that's a different question. But if it's like we're going over here to attack someone, that's a different question. And so the specific context of what that looks like will differ. But the boots on the ground draft thing just doesn't seem like a reality in the future. Not least because most of the country, like 30% of the country, are on antidepressants. How many people are, compared to World War II, how many people are going to pass basic health checks, let alone like basic, very small, more minor things like astigmatism, glasses, right, or asthma, or whatever it might be. I just don't think there's anything close to what would be required. But a lot of people seem to think that people wouldn't join a draft or wouldn't suddenly sign up if called. I'm coming around to the idea that of the complete opposite of that there is such a drastic. We see this with the flag bearing reformists, that there is such a lack of meaning, or at least apparent meaning in people's lives, that something like that would probably scoop people up very, very quickly, just for the fact of not just something to do, but something to do that has immediate purpose with a ton of guidance. But it all just seems very transparent. If there was a world war, it seems that the system's kind of congealed, and I think in terms of a world war, it's very much this case in terms of it seems at least in geopolitical strategy. Not that I'm an expert, but that we're at a point in geopolitical history where the aim isn't really ever to be an aggressor and try, because no one the game playing is, you don't want to put yourself in a situation where it reveals how little you have. And a lot of countries are running extremely low. I mean, look at the UK in terms of a war. We can hardly afford anything. What are we? So at this point in time, we just can't really afford anything. We certainly can't afford to do like the resources to even stop shoplifters, right? So you don't want to have yourself put in a position where you actually have to show your hand. And that seems to be the game playing that's going on. So what would a future world war look like? I mean, it'd probably be like some sort of, surely if you wanted to truly attack or undermine a country going into a world war in the future, instead of putting all your resources into boots on the ground, meat space combat, you would put all your resources into a serious cyber attack. I mean, we're already seeing that kind of stuff. But if you could take down a country's internet for, what, a week? Yeah, like, that country's over. Like, it was in a serious collapse mode. So that seems to be what a world war would look like more in the future. And to what is, weren't we meant to be global citizens? So you're stuck with a generation. I'd really, like, if you're interested in in a way, how I feel about that question, the recent conversation I had with David Lloyd Dusenberry about Kojève and Fukuyama and the end of liberalism really gets towards that you're kind of, we have about 4 or 5 overlapping generations that really consider themselves like citizens of the world and not citizens of states. That thing for them is gone, which is why for me, like, the flag thing, that you can't just suddenly bring that back. It seems very ham-fisted and crass, same to be honest of the use of Christianity all of a sudden. Christianity was on the downward slope, and now all of a sudden, like, people like Farage are saying we're a Christian nation. I want to say, well, how often have you gone to church for the last, what's your favorite Bible verse, as they asked Trump. So all of a sudden you just use the word, which is basically, God is kind of irrelevant now, but you could just use it, right? Everything gets subsumed into the the system. But that's where I get, that's a long-winded answer to a question that would need context, right? Who are we fighting and why and whatever. A bit to the side of politics, but have you ever gone through the Guild of St. George and John Ruskin? I haven't, no, sorry. Do you have core values that you live by? If so, what are they? I honestly don't think I do. I don't think there's something I get up every day and I think I've got to do it. I've got to do it in relation to this. I don't know if is that how things work? I mean, surely it seems to me that we retrospectively impose values onto the actions that we already undertake. I'm not big on free will. Things just seem to happen. And so, like, in terms of when people do something good, they'll ascribe it to their value system, and when they do something bad, there'll be some other justification as to why, like in that instance, it didn't. So I don't have like a set. I don't have a set values, and I'm extremely unsentimental. So that's probably why, on the one hand there's like anti-flag people, and on the one hand there's flag people. I don't like holding on to things. So when people start talking about values or virtues such as like nobility or courage or honor, I just think most of us are just sat behind a computer all day. Like, get a grip, like that. You're not being realistic. You're not a knight. Like, calm down. It just seems that all that kind of stuff seems like absurd, fetishistic LARPing to me. That really isn't. That isn't part of the day-to-day life. Like, what part of the system, to go back to that, what part of this all rationalizing, all totalizing, all controlling system ever at some point actually allows you to enact a value on your own terms? I mean, seriously, good luck with that and not getting basically shit-canned or called out or whatever it might be. Like, if you don't fit, you're just going to be pushed out like fodder. So I couldn't name any. Things just happen. I get up and the days pass, I think. I mean, if you wanted to consider it one, it seems to be one that's stuck, which is that a value of mine is that knowledge should be free and accessible, and that it may very well be the case that a lot of the thinkers that I've covered on the podcast that are overlooked or whatever, there isn't some conspiracy. I've always say this, but there isn't some conspiracy to overlook them. More often than not, those who get through the sort of historical filters, it's just happenstance, it's just chance. It might have been that their publisher just got it in the right place at the right time with the right review and the right lecture series in the day. So one value would be that knowledge does deserve, knowledge and thinkers deserve their time, that deserve to be spoken about. But that's really about it, I think. Do I think there is a metaphysical effect to certain jobs, like being a quantitative trader at a big hedge fund? Do you mean it like, is that like a metaphysically bad thing? I think to be able to do that is going to be able to do that effectively, your consciousness has already been affected, right? To be able to do so many certain jobs within the system, factory worker, school teacher, all these so many alienating, and some arguably, like school teachers, borderline abusive jobs. Your consciousness has already been seriously affected. You've already become a grasping, geist-ridden individual. So absolutely. I haven't read anything by John Michael Greer, but love hearing him on your show. Where to start? I'm very curious about his fiction as well as his occult writing. So for Greer, I mean, there's three avenues there, isn't there? There's the fiction, there's the occult writing, and there's Collapse. So for Greer, for Collapse, I would say begin with The Long Descent and then read Dark Age America. For his fiction, I would say read Stars Reach and then the Weird of Hali series. And then for the occult, he's done like his own Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn series that I'm trying to remember. They're the Kabbalah ones. There's also a practical magic one that he co-wrote with his wife, which is very good, which is just like a practical guide to magic, which is a really good beginner's thing. Someone actually asked somewhere else, this is one of the questions I wrote down. Also, so they said, what magic have I done in the past? And if I plan to use it in the future? I pretty much went as far as you can in terms of practices. Outside of like animal sacrifice, you know, I did summon things and I did just various other magic. I really did. I couldn't think of something I didn't do. So I did everything. Do I plan to use it in the future? There's like two basic things that I still use that just work so pragmatically, which is it's just sigils and manifestation. They just consistently work. And that's all you really need. I would recommend, like, for the kind of stuff that I still do now, is Gordon White's like Chaos Protocols is like the great book on that. Just very pragmatic, like modern text kind of toolkit, that kind of thing. Yeah. Have you ever done any more looking into anti-Buddhism after the chat with Book Ziprin? His other book, Emptiness and Omnipresence, has been a very interesting read so far. You know, me and Brooke really got on, and we emailed quite a bit afterwards. He's a great guy. It was good fun, and we spoke about that we might do an episode. We might record an episode on the present, on the now. That, you know, he wants to argue there's no such thing as the now. I would agree with him that can't even say about the now. But I think we would love to just wrestle. I think there's nothing more fun than wrestling with an imposter. That's something you already know is impossible. And I think like something like that will probably end up with like Jim Newman, where someone asks him what is this, and he just sort of like waves his hand around, like it's this, you know. That's great. I enjoy that a lot. I think you should check out this philosopher. He is amazing. His name is Shahab al-Din Yahaib Habash Sahavadi. He has this amazing concept of dark light. Okay, I'll remember to do that. When you say the UK can't afford anything and cites shoplifters, don't you think this is a mixture of ineptitude, political decision, rather than actual impoverishment? Well, yeah, but one leads to the other. And even if you're not going to use the shoplifting example, we're extremely poor. The UK is an extremely poor nation, and it either is the case. So you could do the conspiratorial thing that this is political ineptitude and the money's being funneled somewhere else. But even if that is the case, the reality that I'm seeing is that there isn't money for things, and that's really not going to change because we're not an energy economy. It was the mistake Germany made as well. That if the economy runs on energy, and it runs on energy production, and it runs on the ability to supply energy, right? And we're just not that anymore, and it'll probably take about 20 to 40 years to get us back to that, even if the technology is even there concerning extraction techniques. And so we're not, it's almost like we're not part of the game anymore. We're very close to not being part of the game anymore, at least. But we may very well become like a safe haven for various companies if something like the US falls into a recession in the coming years, which could happen, it seems. But who knows? What do I think of Wikipedia? I mean, it has its bias. It's frustrating when you see Klages would be an example, because Klages is a great example, actually, as I've been talking about him, that there is just like between the lines, there's an assumption of the thing he calls Geist. So, you know, and the idea of any blank slate anywhere is ridiculous. The idea that whenever anyone says, "Oh, we're going to do this, but we're not going to be biased," I just mean you're going to end up more biased. Same as the people who say we're going to go back to early Christianity. You're going to be even further from everything than the other people who tried. So anything that anytime anyone says, which is the Wikipedia thing, that it's meant to be this unbiased, or at least that's my understanding, that it was originally meant to be like, you know, the sort of rational, unbiased, just the facts encyclopedia online. Like, it's just, that's not a thing. There's no such thing as an unconditioned human being. Aren't the values what get realized at the edges? The banality of the computer operator is just the middle. Yeah, well, you don't get. It's rare you get chance to explicitly live out a value. Yeah, I don't know what to reply to that one. Sorry. Thoughts on astrology, and what's your sign? I'm a Pisces, which I believe is like a red flag, right, for everyone. I'm a Pisces, and I live now near the sea, and I do like taking really long showers, and usually make a massive mess washing up. So there's all water, That's all I know. But to be honest, astrology is one of those things that I've read about, and I've read books on it. And when you know someone who can really do astrology, you really can't deny it. You genuinely can't. But pop astrology, horoscopes in the back of TV mags, or whatever it might be, or grand sweeping statements that cover everything, has kind of overtaken serious Hellenic astrology. But if you find someone who can actually do astrology and you ask for a natal chart or some predictions, if they know what they're doing, you're going to get down to the bone. It's going to be very, very clear, and you realise that there's some truth to it at least. Yeah. How do you reconcile your personal will and desires with God's will in a magical or theological context? I have no idea what God means anymore. I have no idea what God means. Yeah, I reconcile my personal will and desires with God's will. There's nothing there anymore, unfortunately. So reconciling, the closest maybe would be that if you're enacting something, then that is what you are God in that sense. You are of that. You are of life. So the very process of this participation is that. Would be maybe that's the furthest I'd go. So there isn't any reconciliation because what is. Yeah. Do I have any book or author recommendations about negative theology? The Cloud of Unknowing, and then if you want to go all the way back, Pseudo-Dionysus is great. I'm sure there's someone I'm missing out there. Kevin Hart has written on negative theology. James Harper, who I interviewed, covers a lot of the negative theologians in his book Dazzling Darkness, which is just like such a great book. Yeah. Mostly Cloud of Unknowing is the classic though, and that's a book that hasn't come off my shelf since I first got it. So try that one. Do you find that celibacy improves your focus for reading? I'm not celibate. I don't know. I don't. But in the sense of that, if you want to, no, I'm not big on the whole. Like not doing, forcibly slamming down on something and saying, right, I don't do that thing, because it just seems to me that you're doing it, but in the negative. Anyone who's tried to quit smoking will know that when you try quit cigarettes, you're just thinking, I'm really not smoking right now, and you're basically just still doing the thing. The only way that, if you wanted to, I don't know. It's a natural thing that's very fun, and yeah, fucking is great fun. I'm not celibate, so I know, and I've never been celibate for a prolonged amount of time, explicitly undertaken that, so I wouldn't know. Yeah. What are your thoughts on eclectic paganism / chaos? I don't know what eclectic paganism is, but as you've slashed it with chaos magic, I'm going to assume that they're basically the same. Yeah, I love it. It's great. Yeah, I'm big on all the sort of classics of chaos magic. I still read a lot of. As I said just a moment ago, I still read and use. If I use any magic, then I'll chaos magic is the way to go because it just gets stuff done. Like that's what I liked about it was like I don't have to go through this whole ceremonial thing to get done what I need and want done. Yeah. How would one go about quitting something they want to quit? Well, it's a great paradox. But when I've spoken, and this is my own experience as well, that when you finally quit something that you want to quit, it's nothing to do with you. Just the scaffolding is kicked out from under you, and you something that isn't the you. So you have the self, and then there's just something else. There's life. The self gives up because it's the self that has the battle, right? The ego has the battle of I smoke or I don't smoke, the duality, right? And so when it quits, there's like the pressure. And when you finally quit something, that whole thing is kicked away. But you can't consciously do that because, of course, if you could consciously do it, you'd be the self. So it's this kind of horrible paradox, and like I mean this in a non-ironic way, but I don't want to be coy about it. That almost the best way to stop smoking would be to smoke so much that you burn it out. You know, if you want to quit overeating, eat so much one night that you just like pass out or something. Like this strange process of giving up. Yeah. Franz Bardon teaches magic with God and morality in mind. The more time you spend without thought, it will unfold. Okay. For Mickey. Oh, that was for someone else. Okay, sorry. Though I do like Bardon. Like if anyone ever said to me, I want to go serious with magic or whatever and wanted a system, I'd pretty much always say like just go sit down with Initiation into Hermetics and go through it. It's a tough and it demands a lot of you, but yeah. Okay, keep the questions coming. Yeah. I don't think so. Upcoming, I've got an episode on Owen Barfield with Mark Vernon, which was very good. One on the soul in relation to the West with Sean McGrath, if anyone knows him. One on Jean-Luc Nancy, and then to be recorded is one on Bernhard's biography, one on Eric Satie, and there's a few others that are in the works. I'd like to do one because I'm so deep into his work right now. I'd like to do one on Frank Zappa with Bob Dobbs, because Bob interviewed Frank and does a ton of work on Zappa. But Zappa was probably the best like the most important and the best composer of the 20th century. That's right, I said it. So, someone said, how about a random one? Favorite cuisine? Probably Italian. What I like about Italian. So I don't like, even though I do like curry, a lot of cuisines I don't like because they're overcomplicated and they don't allow anything to speak for itself. And this is why actually a lot of when people go out for food, I usually don't really like it because so much food now has been Americanized in that sense of like every dish is like the starter is loaded fries that have got peri peri salt with a triple garlic mayo with a slaw and then bacon chips on top, and like you bite it and you're like I don't even know what to do with this, right? It's like the equivalent of a baby's mobile like spinning and screaming at you like, I think this tastes good, I don't even know. Whereas Italian, like my favorite dish probably ever is pasta aglio e olio, which is just pasta, which is spaghetti or linguine. I use linguine. Linguine, a lot of olive oil, a lot of garlic, parsley, and parmesan, and like you can taste every ingredient, right? Everything speaks for itself. Same with just like plain pasta with some salt and some fresh tomatoes is like that's incredible. So Italian, because I like just like, yeah, you let this, nature has done this, nature has made this, you can't get better than like the taste of basil or basil, right? Yeah. Thoughts on the UFO situation, and am I am I familiar? Every time we do this, I know you won't know, but every time someone says about Jason Giorgiani, um, I don't really know. Right, okay, I don't know the UFO situation, but recently on the UFO Reddit, there was a guy who had this metal tube in his garage that he can't remember what his name was. I think it was like James UFO. I think it actually might have been James. I can't remember. He had this metal tube in his garage, right? And he was filming these ominous videos of like, in 5 days I'm going to open the tube. And then he filmed this video where he drilled into this seemingly alien tube, and he passed out. And the video was really like, he'd filmed it in a creepy way. Turns out the whole thing was a hoax. He found an exhaust pipe on the edge of the road, but like thousands of people got hoaxed by this thing. And after that, I'm just like, you know what, this whole thing, before that I could suspend some disbelief. I would now lean towards that whatever is happening during abductions or alien visitations is very much the same thing that's happening during shamanic rituals or spiritual appearances, or like something happened. Okay, fine, but we don't. But in terms of aliens, literally, like in the sense of a ship flying across the galaxy to us, there is just nothing. There is nothing that has really been, and I've read a fair few books on it. There's nothing that speaks to me that that is the case, that's happened. Yeah. Would I ever do more art? Who are my favourite painters? Do I go to exhibitions? Occasionally will paint something for myself. I have a painting of some horses that I did in my house, and painting of Gurdjieff. I do a painting. Yeah, I'll just do paintings for things that I might like to see around my flat. I'm actually about to venture into the world of video art with an old camera that I want to basically record that nostalgic footage of various things, and then overlay speech of the Burnt Out Nothing thing onto it. That's a little project I've got going. My favourite painters are Gerhard Richter is probably my favourite of all time. I do actually Clifford Still, Ad Reinhardt. I do like Rothko. There's very little in the classical thing. I like Monet actually. I do like Van Gogh, but before that, like I could be really pretentious and say the pre-Raphaelites, but most of that stuff around then just bores me. Same with like Mozart, Beethoven, or whatever. Like it doesn't do it for me. Maybe it's because the culture just saturated me with those images and those sounds to a degree that I can't really pick them apart anymore from the culture at large. Do I go to exhibitions? I don't really. No, can't remember the last time I did go to an exhibition. There's been very few times, like when I was in art school and went to exhibitions. I have an interest in art, but it's almost like there's been very, very few paintings or pieces that have really stuck with me or stopped me in my tracks. So, but the Gerhard Richter retrospective was like the best. One of the, it was just incredible. I would like Japanese cuisine. Then why? Yeah, I don't know much about Japanese cuisine at all, and it's difficult venturing into a cuisine for the first time, because I always feel like for instance, I've never had sushi, and I want someone who knows good sushi, so that the first time I have it, I know that I'm having good sushi. So I'm like, I've got a baseline. Then I'll know if I actually like it or not. Yeah. Is there a Christ figure in Lord of the Rings? I believe it's in part all of them. I mean, Aragorn generally is the central Christ figure as Christ, as fully human, but equally Gandalf's fall with I forgot the name of it. Basically the demon, the fall of Battle of Gandalf Down, and his rebirth is Christ's descent into hell. But then equally, Sam and Frodo all have elements of the Christ figure in them. Yeah. Someone says, do I have any pet peeves? I have one pet peeve that I've never been able to shake, is someone if someone asked me to do something, the Balrog, that's it. If someone asked me to do something, and then while I'm doing that thing, they ask me to go do another thing, it just crosses my circuits and I can't process it. It's a sort of a very modern impatience, that a deep frustration of people rushing things as if there's going to be some end point where everything's done and then what, very annoying. I'm trying to think if I have any. The thing is, if someone asks you that, you can't see them till right in the moment, and you need someone to point them out to you. Pet peeves. No, I don't know. I can't think of any more. What are my favourite paintings of decade from Gerhard Richter? I couldn't tell you. Like, it's been a while since I've really spent time with his work, unfortunately. He did a really interesting 9/11 painting that there was a great review of by Martin Amis. His whole like capitalist realism, which was a whole other art movement thing, was fascinating, and the blurred photo paintings were just incredible, and the retrospective was done in such a way that you just were getting this visual education. So by the end, you began with these beautiful, relatively realist paintings, the progression of which allowed you to understand these great hulking grey paintings, and it was so well done. Favorite TV shows, Utopia, the British Utopia. I remember thinking this is just one of those few cases where clearly they've just been given the money and they've been allowed to do exactly what they wanted to do, which is so rare, but you just get a certain sense they really did. True Detective Season 1, of course, obviously. Sopranos, obviously, which I think is the most accomplished TV show. I'm not big on Breaking Bad or Vince Gilligan now. I think he falls apart on a rewatch, and then just it keeps falling apart until you realise, like, especially with Breaking Bad now, it's like, how did I ever take that seriously? My sort of guilty cheesy watch is The Walking Dead up to about season 7, and then I just kind of can't do it anymore. Cowboy Bebop, if we're going to go animated. I occasionally watch a bit of the Moomins at the moment, which is quite enjoyable and peaceful. Like Snufkin, man, is, yeah. I'm trying to think. I'm sure there's something there I've missed out. Oh, Twin Peaks season 1. Yeah. Favorite Kubrick? Blimey. I think it's tough, actually. Probably Eyes Wide Shut, I think. As I got older, Eyes Wide Shut. There's a flow to that film that it's one of those films that when you put it on, not so much is really happening, but you're being drawn into a flow, and before you know it, quite a long film is over. And I love films like that. I love films and books. I'm a big fan of flow, of being drawn into something, and before you know it, you're deep. Whereas Full Metal Jacket and The Shining do have these sort of jolty moments where it's like, kind of feel a bit stuck. Will I make a video on Al-Ghazali or Derrida? I don't know Al-Ghazali. Derrida I'd like to. I'm not sure how I'll approach that yet, but I'd like to. I was getting into Derrida actually at the end of this year. The general point of there not being a central logos is really important to me now, actually. But I just missed the Derrida era, really, I guess, when I'd started uni. And it wasn't a name that we really heard, even on a Continental Masters at the time. Have I rewatched Twin Peaks: The Return recently? I haven't rewatched it, but I the first watch, I was such a fan. That was another case, actually. I said about Utopia. That was another case where you got the feeling, and I don't know if this is even true, but you just got the feeling David Lynch had been given the money, and it's like, right, just do what your vision, and that's rare. Do I read William S. Burroughs? Anything to add on his relation to Reich, etc., etc.? So I like Burroughs. I think Burroughs is a good writer, but unfortunately for the Burroughs fans, I think Burroughs is better when he's just writing normally. Like, I think Junkie is great, but I'm not big on Actually, I've got it here, and I was going to do a review of it because I got it quite affordably. But the Soft Machine, and I just think I just can't. It's too experimental. I can't really do it. So, but on Reich, yeah, he's good on all those things. But Burroughs either works for you or it doesn't. However, he doesn't. Will I do a movie review of Aguirre, The Wrath of God? I've thought about doing movie reviews, but I just feel then the channel might get too close, and I might. It's easier than you think to get lazy and to go, oh, I'll just quickly do. I'll just, just bash this review out, and movie reviews could very much easily end up like that. I'm not sure how I'd talk about film or. I guess the same way I do the books, but it's mostly books focus really. What ignited your interest and or love for philosophy? I was talking about this with someone the other day about like the first time you have a question like that in your life, and I can actually remember it. I would have been at most 9, maybe 8, and I was sat at the dinner table with my dad, my mum, my brother, and my brother had just started high school. So actually, I'd have been younger. I'd have been 7, I think. And a guy the edgy guy in the year above him at high school. This is British high school, who I still know of this guy. He basically had said to my brother that we're all going to die at the end of. Anyway, and there's no afterlife, so we should all just kill ourselves to get it over with. So there I was, little James. My brother's trying to explain this to my parents, who obviously they had the immediate reaction of like, oh, that's just stupid. And it was, I think, when thinking back, so I would have only been 7, but I remember thinking back and thinking I wasn't really never really been averse to death or freaked out by it. So I remember just thinking like, well, he does have a point. Like that is a point to at least be addressed. So in a sense, my first entry into philosophy was the Camusian question, but given naturally by my brother and the edgy kid at school, which was like, why go on? If we're all going to die at the end, why go on? So that was my first entry into philosophy, and then I think, but I didn't, when I seriously got interested, was around when I was studying art, and then I was studying art theory and realised I was better at theory than I was at painting, because I'm too lazy to be an artist. I'm too lazy to wait for the acrylic undercoat to dry. And next thing I know, I've got this pile of slop on the board, and I think I'll forget it. I'll just write about it. So yeah, that was it. I think. Am I particular about ambient lighting in my home? Well, I have. You might be able to see it in my glasses. I have a ring light now, and usually because I live on my own in an apartment, and all the lights are a bit garish, so I usually just have, if I'm in a room, I just have a lamp, and then the rest of I'm not huge on ambient lighting because I'm usually working, I'm usually doing something. Reading, I'll have a soft lamp for that. Someone asked, would I use Tinder? I'm on Tinder at the moment. I'm on a few dating apps actually at the moment. So yeah is the question for that one. Am I familiar with Nanavira and Hillside Hermitage? So Nanavira Terra, I have they did 2 volumes, and the first volume is the one with notes on Dharma, and I've read that whole volume. I think Nanavira Terra's life is fascinating. The end of his life is even more fascinating. And I'd love to do an episode on Terra. And he's like one of the first Western appreciators of Heidegger, he's taken him really seriously. And the idea, so when they found him and he, commit suicide and found his own Buddhist justification for doing so, the last thing he'd written down and commented on was Heidegger's Being in Time, and it was one of the few books in his little hut, if I remember right. So he's a fascinating figure. I'm familiar with Hillside Hermitage, but from what I've watched of them, I'm a little bit averse, because I'm averse to anything where people will say we're the only ones that have got it correct, and in that sort of lineage, the very much, I guess, the forest lineage, Ajahn Chah It's like Ajahn Chah is fantastic to read and his biography to read, but I'd never contemplate becoming a monk or doing anything like that. So, or being a Buddhist monk, or I don't ever see myself again outside of some sort of miraculous phase shift of consciousness being part of anything like that. I don't know if I could do it again. You know, once one scaffolding is kicked out, I don't know if you can do another one. Would I ever do more episodes with John Custins or Matty Cahoon? Absolutely. Yeah, I'd love to. Yeah. I mean, yeah is the question. It's just finding the topic and whatever. What is my left to right swipe ratio on Tinder? I don't know. No, I don't know. Is this a thing? Am I revealing my age? I get what you mean by it, but I just haven't kept an eye on it. Any more questions? Do I like to debate and argue? No, I don't. So I think, and you can debate me on this if you want. All right, I'm starting to have fun now. Now's the time to ask me the silly ones, because I'm starting to have fun. I think people have a felt or an emotion, especially specifically emotional position, or a felt emotion already, and then any debate or argument is just trying to justify something that's already there. They're not trying to sculpt a position from axioms and priors. They're trying to defend the emotion they already feel. I don't think debates solve anything. If they, as UG likes to say, if people read books, the world would be a utopia. If debates sorted anything and sorted toward the truth, something would have been solved by now. Any question would have been answered, but they haven't been. So do I like to is a different question. I'll give you that. Do I like to debate with someone who's being earnest and sincere? And a good debater, a master debater. Now, a good debater is someone who you recognise as soon as who you know is mature enough that you know that at the end of the debate, they're not going to take any passion that comes from the debate, like, from you as like a slight. That is when it becomes enjoyable. When I interview people, do they contact me, or is it purely what interests? I get more and more. I get contacted more and more these days, and I think actually in the last 2 or 3 months, I think Comedix has gone through a sort of filter, because I'm getting more and more, and some of them really are just not, related at all. It's like, here's this real estate guy who's 30 tips of Canadian real estate was one, and I'm getting more and more and things like that. And so I would say at this point, 80% I contact. It used to be 100% I contact them, but 80% I contact them. And now a lot of publishers know of Comedix, and they'll contact me and say, and I sort of pick, and I'm like, that fits. Because there is almost like too much. It's not just that there's too much to sort of do an episode on, but it's also discerning what would make a good episode. So sometimes it's like, this just won't be a good fit because it's too niche, or it's, it's like on one section of Kant's Second Critique or something. You just think, this won't make for a good, enjoyable conversation. Have I ever gone on a Tinder date and it went well? Yeah, many. Yeah. Yeah. The idea that, like, I don't know. Yeah. There's just a highly online appreciation of dating that just seems to not be able to function in the real world. I mean, none of this is complicated, is it? You just go on a date and talk to someone. I don't overthink it, but yeah. Do I believe in the conspiracy that the Greeks could not see the colour blue? I have no idea about that. I have no idea how to even approach that. Appreciate it. Would I rather be the sun or the moon? Oh, that's a good one. That is an important one as well. Because if you're the sun, you're triumphant, but you're about to burn out relatively soon. Relatively. But if you're the moon will one day become a sun, I think. I don't know. I think so, right? I'll be the moon. The moon's mischievous. It causes lots of trouble. You know, if you talk to nurses and people who work at hospitals, they will all tell you that full moon night goes haywire at hospitals. Very strange. You know, and there's a reason all these esotericists, Gurdjieff, for instance, put the moon as like one of the most important things. I'm watching your Kant series. Do I see parallels between Kant and UG? Absolutely not. Absolutely not. Kant is trying to hold together the most minutiae system of laws and like everything. His 5 billion antinomies, and you know, Kant's hobby was not many people know this, but one of Kant's hobby was border disputes. Like, the man loved rules and rigidity, and UG would come along, and I would love to. I mean, I tell you what, I would pay good money, 20 quid even, to see an argument between UG and Immanuel Kant. Where, if anywhere, do you think art is going? Any particular medium do you think is able to express the spirit of the new aeon? Well, I don't know what the new aeon looks like. I mean, we are heading into our winter. If you think, for anyone who, I will unfortunately admit this, I have watched the most recent Stranger Things, and it's possibly the worst thing. That's a bit hyperbolic, but it's so unfathomably bad. But I don't think we're even close to how bad we realise things can get. You know, the reduction of what entertainment is for people, which is largely now just filling time, will eventually be like, you know, we see this with the split on Instagram Reels, where someone is chatting and there has to be like something to keep your attention while you listen to it. I think that will be how films are. The amount of cuts in films are going up. So the future of art will probably be something akin to someone like you get given a big bag of sweets as you enter the gallery, and then you get a muscle relaxant in your neck so you can swivel it faster between things. And then there's like a fart sound, and then there's a pair of boobs, and then there's a bum, and then there's like a Monet, and then there's like a film, like there's Shrek playing, like, and it just, yeah. I would say, I think that Frank Zappa was the last great artist of this cycle. I think that Frank Zappa's musical project was the swan song of consumer culture, of the final culture, if you can call it that we ever had. And that, you know, I do agree with Spengler in the cycles theory. And so where's art going? There's nothing new under the sun. We've gone through the cycle. We've gone through our forms. You know, there's not going to be anything new. We're just going to be recycling things now, you know. Do you still live in the countryside? Sounds like wall-to-wall hotties around your parts. I still live by the sea in a county that is largely old people, so I don't know, you know, not really my thing, but wall-to-wall hotties. You sound like Boomer. Got to get out there, son. They're waiting. Wall-to-wall hotties, maybe. But I still live in deep Norfolk, yeah. And I like it here. Would I rather be the wind or a tree? I feel like they're together in it, aren't they, really? Probably the wind. No one's going to triumph over the wind. Whereas a tree, there is nothing often more heart-aching than the sound of the cracking of a tree that's been cut down, and that really ineffable thump where something, and you get this with people to an even greater degree. Anyone will know this who's gone to see like a relative on life support in a hospital. But that moment between like when you can see someone on life support but something is gone and they're like the living dead. And the tree, like, it's amazing how a tree can be rooted and there, and there's something about it that is ineffably alive, but then as soon as it's cut and fallen, it's like it's gone, like something's gone. So I don't want to go through that as a tree. But if I was a tree, I think I'd be a wild cherry tree. Or a willow. Yeah. I know you've mentioned that Straw Dogs was your first philosophy book you read. Any areas you strongly disagree with Gray? I don't know. He's more of a pop philosopher, is my understanding. So I haven't read that in a long time, and I wouldn't be able to place him. But I mean, generally with pop philosophers, kind of the Jordan Peterson vein, they are actually even stronger ballasts for the system that's ruining everything, because they give you the illusion that there's some alternative when they aren't. Any new fiction in the pipeline? Yeah, there is. I mean, there's many stories that have been drafted, and I want to get it. There'll be a new collection of fiction short stories next year, and at some point, much to everyone's dismay, even my own, to be honest, I do want to get into writing poetry, but I'm just not very good. And there's nothing worse than someone who started a blog who then says, oh, like, here's my poem. You're like, oh, no, I didn't sign up for this. Yeah. Do I think Bob Dobbs is insane or a charlatan? Those are the two options. Why can't he be all? I don't want to. If someone was to say that Bob Dobbs was the greatest performance artist the world has ever seen, would I disagree with them? No. Do I think he's insane? No. Do I think he's a charlatan? No. You have to go deep. There's so much there, and pretty much everything he's ever mentioned to me has been backed up. Yeah. If I could be any animal, which would you be and why? Oh dear me. Maybe a polar bear, a sea anemone, but the seagulls around here are massive now, and they just eat chips all day. But apparently it's all feathers. So, well, dear me. These are flipping between fun questions about animal and someone grilling me about my love life. Would I like to get married? I don't think I would, actually. What would you look for in a good partner? I don't know. Fun? Play, I think, is a key one. Play is the main one. And someone who at least understood the system in that sense. But I'm really not big on this idea of I want da 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 in a person, because anyone who has fallen in love or really been bowled over by someone will know it's just not how it works. Humans aren't these quantified machines, and this is like the online temperament towards love and relationships now is like, what I'd really like from a woman is like, you're going to demand this. Well, why don't you go talk to them first, and then you just see if you get on, because you might meet someone who on paper 90 things out of 100 you'll be like, nah, I'm not really about that, but then there is some, again, ineffable chemistry that what the hell's going on, and next thing you know, so what would I look for? See, I don't know. Imagine that. Imagine looking, because what is it that's looking? It's someone who probably wants to be safe. So yeah, what is my process like for coming up with and writing a fiction story? I don't really do processes, and I don't have like these kind of things. Generally have the idea, and I'll write down the idea. Like, for instance, one at the moment is I have an idea for a story about a man who is getting these headaches, and he has a tumor, and they find a tumor, and so they take out the tumor, and the headaches go. But he realizes that his life was so dead that he misses the headaches, and so he hunts through the medical waste bins and finds the tumor and tries to do everything he can to reinsert the tumor just so he can feel these headaches again. But eventually it doesn't work, so he has a funeral for the tumor. But the process of that will just be, I'll write down the sentence, like man has headaches, finds tumor, wants to insert tumor, and then I'll just let that sit for a long time. And then the good thing about that is then you become honest about that's just not going to work. And some things, that my rule with writing is be fine. It takes so long to do this, but sometimes you have it in your mind that a certain idea is going to be short or it's going to be long. And sometimes it takes a real sort of courage to go, actually, that's as long as this gets to be. And it's just, good night, sweet tumour. I might call it that. That's a good word. That's a good one. Someone says, Zappa is my least favourite of the classic prog acts, and I'm an American and much prefer the British soft machine. It's strange. I prefer the American because I find that I do like Emerson, Lake and Palmer at the moment. Yeah. If I could fist fight any thinker alive or dead, who would it be? Goodness. Who would be the most ridiculous to fist fight? Like who, if you got in a fight with them, you'd think, what am I doing? I mean, Socrates. Yeah, Socrates. I'd fight Socrates all day. I'd sit there in the marketplace with my lunch, waiting for that annoying old man to come over, and then I'd swing at him. That's not how fights work. Someone, you think in your mind, I'm going to do this, and then I'm going to do this, and then really it ends up with a load of grappling, and then you're on the floor, and you realise you both look like idiots. It's great. If you were only able to say one word for the rest of your life, what would it be? Oh, love. Love. Like, if you had to pick one, it's going to be love, isn't it? But then if I was angry, love, love, love. Love. Yeah. Have I read anything from Ken Wilber? I read one Ken Wilber. I can't remember what it was. It was sort of like a collection of his ideas kind of thing. Yeah. Socrates versus Benny Hill. Damn. I'm getting referred to as Benny Hill. He's the Benny Hill of philosophy. I don't like that. That whole post-war, like, just got out of rationing, we can really start to be absolutely just grim Jim Davidson era. I find appalling. Can you share a memory from your life that is special to you? I can, but it's just, it's gonna be any memory with my great uncle, special to me. Sat around watching the snooker, drifting in and out of sleep over Christmas generally. I don't have too many. I'm not very sentimental, but they're the only ones really. But yeah. Have I ever been in a real fight as an adult? I've been in 4 fights in my life, and 2 were as an adult. They're just silly. They're just silly. These are all many years ago now. Like, the last one would have been I was 22. I feel like a fight with Diogenes would be an excerpt from the Holy Fool chapter in Laurus. I actually thought about it, but I don't want to fight Diogenes, because I feel like he'd be like, this is great, being the cynic. So I wouldn't want to fight him, because Diogenes is one of my heroes. Nice moustache, thank you. Someone says it seems like the channel is shadow banned. Do you mean like it's not, if you're saying it's not getting as much attention and monetary income as it should be, I think I'd have to agree. Why do you say it's shadow banned? While you reply, philosophers that I hate. Sort of anyone who's, Hobbes. I just think it's nonsense. Any sort of statist philosophy I would dislike, but there's almost always elements of philosophy. There's almost always an element of a philosopher that I can say I do at least agree with that. For instance, even Ayn Rand, her notion that when someone is like donating to charity, they're doing it because it's like the top of their sort of subjective hierarchy of desires. That does make sense to me, but she then, the rest of it, and I just think, yeah. So any that I actually hate, it'd be interesting to think, is there any I actually disagree with on almost everything that I hate? I'm not keen on Sartre. I've tried with Sartre and I'm just not keen. Real swampy stuff. No. I don't think there are. No. Nice moustache. Yep. Thank you. Takes a while. Took a while to grow. Any more questions? And as there's more people here, Merry Christmas. I hope you all had a lovely Christmas day. I hope you all have a lovely New Year. Thanks. Thanks for listening. What do I mean swampy about Sartre? That being in nothingness, I think I'm with Dreyfus on this, that it's the most interesting misreading of Heidegger. And I remember reading Nausea and just feeling like this is a man, there's a joke about, Sartre says his famous Sartre thing is hell is other people. And I think a joke on that really isn't just being sarcastic and coy is, well, maybe if you didn't hang around with a load of misery guts and French philosophers who are chain smoking in a cafe all day, you might not think other people are hell. And I think there's actually something serious in that. Which philosopher would Santa most like? So Santa altruism, maybe like Jean-Luc Nancy. There's a Jean-Luc Nancy episode coming up as well. That's going to be the first one after New Year, actually. Yeah. Because of the other Levinas, maybe, yeah. Oh, we're doing that. There's another Nishitani coming up as well. Yeah. Keep up. I'm enjoying this. You guys have made my Christmas. Thank you. It's really cold. I could actually see, and this isn't a hint that maybe you should donate to the podcast or become a patron, but I could see my breath in the air because of how cold it is here, and putting the heating on, it costs money. That's all I'm saying. I could see my breath this morning though. It was distinctly British when I woke up, and I just wanted to die. It was fantastic. I love that. Yeah. I'm trying to think what other episodes. Yeah. Thoughts on I Ching taking oracles. I've done. My main divinatory method used to be actually William Burroughs. Would be a really good book for this. I could do some right now. Would be what's called bibliomancy, where you just take a book and you keep a question in your mind, like, will James ever get married, right? And then you close your eyes, find a page, you put your finger, let's say, on a random page, and it says, hieroglyphs refer to dates in the calendar, and you realise bibliomancy is completely useless, and that was bibliomancy is generally very, very fun. Yeah. Thoughts on, but I think I Ching and tarot kind of misunderstood. I mean, if you have a supernatural bent, then you can use them for whatever. But in terms of, especially the tarot, in terms of these images, kind of hitting your unconscious in such a way that you suddenly think about something from a different angle. Same with bibliomancy, same with whatever divination. So the I Ching, I've only ever done I Ching once, but yeah. And it was correct. It was 40C in Western Australia on Christmas Day. I'd gladly trade you. Yeah, but you're 40C and happy, and we're like 3C and miserable. Which one? And it's overcast. Yeah. Favourite number? The number that's always followed me around is 28. Don't know about that, but it's always followed me around. I'll start paying once the FG Younger episode comes out. I'll remember that. Favourite colour is Seafoam Green. What do I think about Morrissey? I'm slamming through them. What do I think about Morrissey? I love, my favourite Morrissey song is Every Day is Like Sunday. And I'm 99% sure he wrote that about Great Yarmouth, which is a just dire seaside town in the UK, where he's talking about come nuclear bombs, right? It's the town they forgot, which is all seaside towns. There's something very liminal about it. How did philosophy get from Socrates asking what is justice to Nick Land's schizo time travellers? Ask Ludwig Klagers, because for Ludwig Klagers, the moment in history most appropriate for understanding when Geist that is the controlling, rationalizing, westernized mind, Infectedus was Socrates. So how did it? Because once you begin to reason with the Socratic method, the end result only ever could be something that is like the hyper reason of all this stuff that we've got now. So it is inherent within the Socratic method to end up with Nickland Gematria on YouTube. They're together. What is my happy place? Well, oh God, I don't know if I've got one. I don't know if I have a specific place, but there might be specific times. So like getting back home after a trip, and that feeling of like opening the door and putting your stuff down, that's a banger. Feeling of being very comfortable in a restaurant and getting your food and knowing you can relax, it's a good one. I don't know if I have a happy place. I never specifically felt at home really anywhere. You know, school, like a lot of people are very nostalgic and sentimental about their youth. I'm not. I don't really there. I mean, again, I mentioned my great uncle. Maybe memories of my great uncles was my happy place. Another one is when you get so far out on a walk or a hike or in a woods that you're so far away that you're in, like, if you fell over and broke a leg you might die or something like that. Like that, I know it sounds absurd, right? But just some feeling of that I'm genuinely detached from things. Like one thing I like to do, I'm revealing a lot about myself in this one. Because I live near the sea, one thing I like to do, if you've read Moby Dick, there's this scene with Pip, he's like the cabin boy, and when they're doing the chase to Moby to the white whale, Pip falls over, and before he can even get his bearings, the rowboat is about a mile away that way, and the ship is a mile away that way, and he describes as being in an abyss of the sea that is infinite in every direction. And when in the summer I'll swim out in the sea and turn so I can't see the coastline, and you can sort of just imagine yourself being in an abyss of sea and just let that feeling wash over you, and it's like pure fear, pure terror, but pure relaxation. It's great. So where's my happy place? Pure oceanic terror. If I ever did a movie review, Withnail and I would be fun. I like Withnail and I. Unfortunately, it's now aged in a very weird way, because I think something about that film was specific to the idea that was a way of life prior to like the Blairite future of the UK. But now I wonder if maybe in 5-10 years, watching Withnail and I is going to be a different story when we go, oh, blimey, at least these two guys can afford a flat, however crappy, you know? So, yeah, but I do love that film. It's one of the great comedies. Would I ever date an older woman? Your questions are always so open on these matters. I mean, I think there's a limit. I think, but a woman that is, I'm only 31, so a woman that is older than me, yes. But if you mean like a grandma, then no. It's going from a would you date an older woman to can an adviter. I don't think so. I mean, again, Kant is a system. People, the thing with philosophy is generally there's a plasticity where you can kind of make anything work. I mean, you might be able to eschew something to do with the noumena into adviter, but yeah, don't know what to say about that one. That person who said I was shadow banned just didn't reply, and I don't think I am. I tend to get the same amount of, well, a very slowly increasing amount of views and whatever. And I get all these people now contacting me. Like I said, I've gone through this kind of filter of size with the channel. I get more and more people contacting me like, we can work together. I can do shorts for your channel. And I have the same email that if they email me once, I don't reply because I'm not interested in like doing shorts or adverts or sponsorships. But if they email me a second time, which does annoy me a bit, I'll always say the same thing, which is I don't want to grow. Which is like they don't know what to do with it. What do you mean? everything should be bigger and better. And no, it shouldn't. No, it shouldn't. Leave me to my audience that are lovely, and we all just get on and we enjoy this stuff. And I'll never do shorts. And any more any more questions? I do want to say at the end of the year, I want to say a big thank you to a lot of publishers, really, but specifically Aeon, who are always extremely giving. All the Greer stuff and so many other guests. So big shout out to Aeon Publishing. Go check them out. And a big shout out to like Princeton and Chicago and Oxford and Cambridge, who I do a lot with, and MIT as well. Have kept me in books. Do I think that Kant was secretly Nietzsche? I don't. Do I meditate? If so, can you share experience with it? I used to go through all these phases of different meditations. I've done all the types of meditation. I don't anymore. I never really got anything from it, and just don't anymore. I'm not averse to it, but I think there's this great thing with Barry Long, actually, where this woman writes to Barry Long and says, "Dear Barry, I've been meditating for 30 years every day, and I still really struggle with the discipline of doing meditation every day. What would your advice be?" And Barry Long says, "Give up. Stop doing it. Because there's clearly not anything there." And I think this is the same thing. That, I mean, look, if you meditate and you do notice, but it's very easy to lull yourself into it's very easy to placebo yourself. I can speak from experience on that. But you know that if you do notice something from it, well, then keep it up. But equally, like, I just didn't get enough from it. I don't. Yeah. So, but I do think that periods of phases of meditation might seem right, but reasoned and rationalized meditation. Oh, it's 9 a.m. Right, I've got to do my 30 minutes of meditation. That seems so averse to the flow of things. Are the Sephirot related to Kantian categories? I don't think so. Do I have any favourite art writers? Well, Ad Reinhardt, who's one of my favourite writers, wrote a book on art. Art as Art, I think it was called, which is great. There was a really good collection on art. Can't remember what it's called. Someone sent me some yen. Thank you. So I can raise the temperature to 22 degrees over New Year's. Thank you. That's very kind of you. Thank you so much. Thank you again. Invader Ren. And favourite art writers? Van Gogh's letters are very good, and I've got Da Vinci's notebooks on my bedside table, which is very, very good. Very, very enjoyable. I'm just trying to think of my art books that I've kind of got. Latour, Iconoclash is fine. Very hard to get your hands on now. Yeah. Do I have any New Year's goals? I have one New Year's resolution that I've already begun. That's to listen to every single Frank Zappa album. And I'm about 20 deep. And boy, there is a treasure trove of music there. But other than that, no, I don't have any... Well, good goals... Well, one goal is to finish this Klages thing up and really have that as a place people can go to really get into his work for the first time in English. Finish the short story collection. Maybe one goal is to... I don't know how many of you guys do this, but I'm getting worse for stopping and starting books. On the one hand, my life is short, and you get 50 pages in and you think, no, you know what, I'm not doing this, and I don't think there's anything wrong with that. On the other hand, I'll say, right, I'm just going to read this book, and then 2 weeks later there's a stack on my bedside table that's like 10 high, and I get a bit flippant with that. So that the goal is to be a bit more like, right, I'm sticking with this book till the end. Yeah. What's the difference between joy and happiness? What would you do if you met an angel? Okay, we'll start with the joy and happiness. So happiness, I think, it's a very dangerous... I mean, really, that's quality and quantity is what you're asking there. Because happiness is like... The pursuit of happiness, really, in the material consumerist religion that we live in is the pursuit of things that will make you temporarily happy under the illusion that that is happiness generally. It's like, if I go see this film, I'll be happy. If I get this thing, I'll be happy. If I do X, Y, and Z, I'll be happy. Which is quantified, which means as soon as it's gone, then you just go back to your normal state. Whereas joy, I would say, as a quality, is something, like children have joy. They're joyful, but just because, there isn't some quantified thing of it. So that would be the difference. So on one hand, you can really talk about, like it's very easy to drill down into the happiness that we conflate with holidays and blah blah blah. But joy, it's like you kind of can't talk about that because it's, again, an ineffable quality. What would I do if I met an angel? Well, I'd summoned angels before. It's not that drastic, really. Just feel all right. But if you mean like an actual, like they're before me, I wouldn't have anything to ask it, really. I'll say, well, how am I doing? Why are you here? Probably said, why are you here? Yeah, that'd be about it. Do I like Guinness, and which philosopher wouldn't? I don't drink, I'm actually sober. But I do like Guinness. Which philosopher wouldn't? Most of the French, I would have thought. Sort of, I can't imagine Foucault drinking a Guinness. Sure, it's more of a Bacardi and Coke, man, I would have assumed. Do you see Peter Kingsley and B.C. Hahn, Byung-Chul Han, as Hermetic? Yeah, I think so. Peter Kingsley talks about that in Catafalque. He's quite a Hermetic thinker, I think, if I remember right. Byung-Chul Han, I don't know, he's Catholic, and Catholic Zen thing, so I don't know. Yeah. Do I believe in C influence, and who would you say is one? If this is the Gurdjieff ABC influences, I can't remember that exactly, but C influences are like people who genuinely have connection, right? So there's like an actual Jesus figure. Because then you have like A, which is like the Bible, and then you have like a guru, and a C is the big deal, like the Tibetan masters or whatever. Well, isn't the theory there's always there's 8 masters on the world at any one time? It's strange being in the position that I am and talking about all this kind of stuff all the time. I haven't really seen anyone crop up. Like, I don't know if it's because there's a saturation of gurus and teachers and especially non-dual people, but there seems to be an absolute saturation of that. And like, even in recent history, you had like Barry Long, you had Yuji Krishnamurti, died in 2007. You had Adi Dar, you had Jiddu Krishnamurti, and these are all fairly recent. And I don't know if it's just that when they're here, there's sort of this trepidation to go see them or something. But I haven't heard. No one's mentioned to me like you should go see this guy, and no one has really come across to me as anything more than sort of a learned, maybe awakened individual. So maybe they're all tucked away at the moment. There's no Gurdjieffs or Steiners of the world today, it seems. Did I ever take psychedelics? No, I didn't. I never did psychedelics because I've always been. I guess it's always been a bit of a both cautious, but a logic on that was like, well, what the people who talk to me about psychedelics, I would think, well, what's the end game? Like, which is really, you can do this with philosophy as well, which is that the people who read and agree with a certain philosophy and especially espouse it, well, you can look to them for what the end result of that philosophy will look like and say, am I actually that interested in it? And psychedelics, they seem intriguing, but all the people who always tried to like defend them and like try almost like not in an aggressive way, but like push them and say you should really do them, all they could talk about was psychedelics. All they could talk about was like, oh man, it's amazing. They could never really, and maybe it's a problem with the phenomenology, but they could never really convey why I'd be that interested in doing them. So no, I haven't. Are the omens for 2026 good or bad? I think if from what I've heard, astrologically speaking, if you rode out late 2024 and especially 2025, which was quite bumpy, if you rode that out well and you managed to hold on to something, then 2026 is going to be good. It's going to be like you've got this solid foundation. I don't know if you didn't. Don't know. They didn't tell me that. Do I go sock sock shoe shoe or sock shoe sock shoe? It's big. I go sock sock shoe shoe, but that's usually because I don't put shoes on for some days. I don't, you know. That's a big question. Never thought about that. Never thought about it like that. Any advice for getting into Gurdjieff works? Yeah, read Kenneth Walker. Read Kenneth Walker's study of Gurdjieff's teachings, and then read the In Search of the Miraculous, which is one of my all-time favourites. Yeah. Okay. Any more? How long have I been going? 1 hour 40. I haven't even eaten yet today. Any more questions? Any more? What do I make of Bernardo Kastrup's analytic idealism? I see Kastrup's very, very popular, but I don't know his work that well. Unfortunately, maybe I think he does podcasts quite a lot, so maybe I'll get him on at some point. But yeah, I don't. Yeah. Yeah. If anyone got any more questions, then please put them in the chat. I'll probably make these like the last ones, and then call it a day. It went by pretty fast, actually. It's closing in on 2 hours. Do I have okay, there's in there that's very easy. Most overrated classic book, Siddhartha. I can't stand that book. Do I have an opinion on Swedenborg and Henry Corbin? I didn't really investigate Corbin too much after the 2 episodes that I did, and he seemed like a very open thinker. That just one of those ones that sometimes people just find a thinker that works, and I haven't ventured back since. Swedenborg, again, there's so much there. Yeah. But I have an opinion on them, no. I find Swedenborg's notions of heaven ridiculous, right? Like, they are literally the idea of, like, you're in this quintessential English Victorian park or something. And there's also this idea in Swedenborg where everyone has a soulmate. And so say you were married to someone, like 60 years or something, your whole life you're married to someone. Well, there's a theory in Swedenborg that everyone has a soulmate. And so what if you get to heaven and actually it turns out you didn't pick your soulmate? You're like, oh, see ya. It's a bit awkward. Who is the biggest loss to occultism 2025? Unfortunately, no one springs to mind. I mean, someone actually put beneath it David Lynch. Oh, they're the same person. Yeah, David Lynch. I'd say David Lynch, yeah. Have I tried to get Peter Kingsley on? I did, yeah, about 2 or 3 years ago, and he just wasn't. I think he's kind of moved out of the doing talks. Why can't I stand Siddhartha? It just didn't. It was meant to be this kind of, you know, one of the groundbreaking self-discovery novels, and I just found it dense and slow, and for how small it was, I just didn't care about what was happening in it. Is there a future for the idea of communities of independent thinkers? There is, there absolutely is, there always will be. But it's always a case, again, of, I think, defending against 2 things. One is defending against a certain type of online ironic culture where every reply is a joke and nothing is taken seriously, or really, like, believe that we could seriously, we're actually interested in this altogether. And the other one is just have to rule it with a sort of an iron fist. And because the internet, you know, you'll see this, like, on Reddit is probably the most famous example. Just like every thread, the first comment is this tongue-in-cheek, like silly. It's either a movie reference or an ironic quip, and and just no one like the idea of taking anything in earnest now is like just gone, and I think that's what any independent community needs. Have I ever read Pierre Klosowski? I've read Nietzsche and the Vicious Circle a long time ago. I'd like to actually do a review of that one because it's one of these sort of elusive books. But some of his other stuff is on my list to read. He's actually, 2 of his works are in the canon as put forth by can't remember his name. Have you ever started to learn a non-English language? I've tried. I didn't learn them very well when I was young. Even when my brain was plastic, I just didn't adhere to them well. So I don't know if it's some aspect. Like I've tried to learn to code before, and I just don't. It's like my brain just with languages especially, it can learn all these separate parts. Like that, what is that? That, what is that? But it doesn't. I can't learn the thing that coheres it. So I've tried and failed. Sounds like Redscape Pod. Yeah, I'm not into that kind of podcast of mates sitting in a room. You know what I mean? Like gassing. I do it with a Q&A, I guess. But generally as something to listen to every week as this kind of quips and nothing serious and it's just the boys. I just think like go do that in real life. This is like a surrogate friend now. I don't know how good that is. But if they invited me on, you know, hey man, virtue untested is no virtue at all. But as we're probably getting near the end, if there's any more questions, I'll answer them. But I want to say, as usual, I want to say a big thank you to everyone for listening, and thank you for patrons for keeping everything running, and a happy new year to everyone. And yeah, I hope you all had a good festive season. And if there's anything you ever want to email me or want to chat or whatever, ping it over. I'm always open to chat. Someone said, "Is Beowulf as important as Iliad?" I think in the context of British mythology, Anglo mythology and folklore, absolutely. It's a great little read. The Oxford edition's very good. It really gets you. It's really got like a sort of percussional drumbeat to it. Do you follow any other patrons or podcasts? The only podcast is Darren. Like the only person I really patronize, give patronage to, is Darren Allen and his podcast Egg Pod, which isn't. It's kind of an infrequent thing he does. There probably are a few actually that I might be forgetting, but it's tough to keep on top of it when you're producing it yourself. And some people even say to me that one podcast a week is itself often too much to like find the time to do. It's kind of astounding when you're fully grown adult how tough it can be to find the time for 1 hour. So there you go. But yeah, thanks everyone for popping along. I mean, we're getting on for 2 hours, so I'm going to wrap up. But any ideas or anything you'd like to see or anything like that, just email it over or comment at some point or whatever it might be. Plenty of ways to get in contact. But a big thank you to everyone, and